This morning, we are walking slightly away from the music conversation and talking about the bigger picture as well. Now, empowering the African youth, the future of education and innovation. Now, this morning, we are honored to have two special people. Join us on the show. Now, Isaac, he's a self-motivated, solutions-oriented, adaptable, entrepreneurial, and intellectually poised youth leader. I like that. Yeah, I love it. With years of experience in working to build startups and teams for success. Also the host of Change Africa podcast, which we'll talk about that later on in the show, where he gets to be up close and personal with, have conversations with leaders at the helm of African transformation. And of course, he's not here alone. He's smiling. And in the blue corner, if I can say that, Stephanie, she's also very experienced. Stephania, I beg your pardon. Stephania.
I want to correct you.
Stephania, I beg your pardon. Please, apologies.
Thank you.
She's an experienced creative director, curator, and designer as well, with demonstrated history of working in the creative and retail industries, as well as building materials industry. Now, she's also the founder and creative director of El Loco. Yeah. You know that building, right? Local House. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll do the connection later on the show. I bet you understand it, yeah? Well, this morning they are on the show with us, and we're talking about empowering the African youth. Now, this is a very important conversation that maybe we turn a blind eye to it, not entirely. Maybe we talk less about it, but education in itself is very important, and you know how impactful education is on, let me just say, even a human being and what it does to you. And of course, as you are educated, innovation comes into play because we are all evolving, we are all growing, and we need to grow with the times and the seasons that we are in, or else we'll be caught up in the past and we'll be lost out, like a few friends of mine who are lost in the 60s still. I don't want to mention their names on TV and radio. But anyways, that's just on the side. So please welcome to the show, Isaac and Stephania.
Thank you.
Isaac Aboa and Stephania Manfreda.
Yeah.
Please welcome to our house.
Thank you very much.
Meet Olele and meet Cereal.
Hi guys.
Hi. I mean,
and you?
Jay. Yes, thank you very much. We've been talking about the importance of educating the African, and I'm very sure, not to be being political, but one of the on the NPP's manifesto about free SHS and all, I'm sure the whole idea is for the purpose of educating people, getting people access to education, be it paid or free. Access to educating, good quality education. But I'm very sure all these conversations were as a result of a certain crisis that we probably have found ourselves in. So I beg to ask, and to both of you, let me start off with Stephania first. What do you think, in your personal opinion, is the current state of access to good quality education in Africa? Be it youth, adults,
Just
child,
generally.
across.
I mean, well, there's different forms of education, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk about your regular traditional formats of your schools and universities, good ones, again. Well, it's not everywhere that there's access, I guess. And then education is a big subject. It's like you are looking at education in the context of your own culture, internationally. Because you have to now interact with the world, and what is available on ground, So free education is good because it captures a very broad net of people, and obviously a lot of hands that might have been in youth labor would now be shifted towards education, at least in parts. They still have to usually work when it comes to these environments. Or even our own traditional culture, how much do they teach us about our own history, in the context of Africa, since our history has mostly been written by others for us.
For us, yeah. We were saying that just yesterday.
Yeah, that whole conversation is also something that needs to be looked at. In fact, we're seeing a lot of situations where now, there's all these repatriations and reparations being made for cultural items that have been taken away and sent to museums abroad, and all these issues. There's a lot coming up to the surface now. But access generally, I think it's expensive if you want to be very well educated, and that's just globally. I think everywhere in the world is expensive. No, that's wrong. Some countries. The ones which maybe we tend to go to might be expensive. I was in Italy, which has a different format whereby your school was public school, it's taxed. So it's according to your income level. So if you're very rich, you pay more for university. If you're not, they have like all kinds of subsidies. So it kind of balances out for everyone. And so everyone has the chance to go to a good university because the rich pay for the poor and it's kind of like it just evens out. We don't have that here, obviously. Here, you either go or you don't go. And, we have a lot of situations where children are sent home from school because, they haven't paid their school fees and whatnot. So I think the price of it, a lot of the times, is the major issue.
Yeah.
Then when you're looking at the quality, obviously the teachers and, the whole setup also has to be addressed because they are the ones that are providing the service.
The service. Yeah, interesting. I like the points you've raised. I mean, you just run us through a lot of things that I wanted to touch on with.
Broad.
Yeah, very broad. When you talk to these, Isaac, when you talk to these leaders, because who are the helm of affairs, who are game changers, who are influencers or the ones who have the power to be able to create, equal, basic, quality education, what do they say? And what do you derive from what is happening in Africa?
So, it's very interesting that we're talking about education today because today our podcast another episode is live. And that really focuses on transforming early childhood education. Our guest, Precious Bonsu, is the founder of VIT School. And we've had a lot of people who have been working in the education field for a very long time. So we've spoken about education at the length and breadth of all the possible dissections that you can. I think Africa's state of education is one that is not culturally and economically inclined, right? So we are...
Explain.
We are living off a certain Western ideology of what education is, right? I fundamentally think that education does not always have to have an economic imperative. We should not be training people necessarily because we want them to get a job and all of that. I think that education is literally a moral right. Every individual needs a certain level of knowledge to be able to perform and be an active member of society, right? We expect that when people get 18, they participate in a certain democracy because their views are as important as the other person, right? But we only do that because we think that people have the ability, right, to necessarily think through issues and come up with what you think is a cogent decision based on critical thinking and practical reasoning. But unfortunately, not everyone is able to get that. So from that reason, necessarily, just your function of society depends on the quality of thoughts that you have. And that's really the foundation of what good education is. But the reason why I say that it's not culturally inclined is that we have been built in a certain different environment and culture. So we should think about how do we make sure that when people are growing up, the things they see is really culturally attuned to the kind of education we have. Because why do we have an education system where, for example, children go to school for a very long time, right, and do not even hear stories, right, about the environment that they are in, and they are reading books that really send them too far away. But then the education, the content in it, right, could be very near them, and then it becomes real to them, right? So people go to school and they learn a lot of very abstract things, right, and they do not find value in transferring those things that they learn in their daily lives into the practical things that they do, because that's what the purpose is. The ability to be able to think, but also transfer that thinking into useful things in your daily life to make actively good decisions that affect almost every part of your life. And that's where it's suffering. And then the economic impact is that as an African continent, what do we need in the next 10 years? What is our priority? Obviously, Africa is a huge demographic, so that sounds like a huge generalization, but at least let's talk about Ghana. What is Ghana's aim in the next 50 years? Do we want to become an agricultural economy? Do you want to become a technological...
heavily in that space. Yeah.
So have a roadmap, basically.
Yeah, we have a roadmap education, right? Because, for example, you take a country like China, which is ruling the world right now. You take a country like India, which is...
IT.
Every big company in the world literally has an Indian CEO right now. It didn't happen by default, right? They are very brilliant people, but obviously that's also a cultural problem. They tune their education into tech, right? And that has grown the fruits. So we can take a school like Ashesi University. There are companies that are exclusively employing Ashesi University students now because they've seen their merit. But the truth is, Ashesi University's full fruition of the product that is doing now, maybe 20 years, 30 years down the line, because it takes a cycle. And I don't think we have the same intentionality as a government, as a ruling class, right, around what we should do towards the future of education. That's the problem it has.
Wow. Yeah, just to jump in there,
Open the can of worms.
I agree with everything you said. I just wanted to pick your mind on what you think cultural self-awareness has to do with the foundation needed to make sure that all the things, the context that you spoke of actually works if it is executed. Because I know how it is in China. And the cultural self-awareness is what drives the context for the education system. Same for Russia, same for India, blah, blah, blah. Ghanaians are, like I said this year,
British
exactly. We don't gatekeep our cultural sanctity, right? We are a mixed bag of every culture, every exposure, and, you know, somebody takes a plane from Accra to Kumasi and comes back with slangs, you know. We're like a cultural sponge. we absorb everything. We're a cultural sponge, right?
We do good, nice, and you
Can we start like beeping the show like
I'm saying nonsense. No, but true, you know what I'm saying.
I agree with you.
We're so quick to love outside cultures and other things, and we know so little about our own culture. And you need to understand that what Ghana can be is only achievable if we know who we are as Ghanaians.
True.
So for me, putting an educational structure together is easy. But if the person doesn't know who he is, I might as well bring somebody from China and give them that structure to fix Ghana. So I want you to speak to me if you've got any roadmap or any thought structure on how you think we can fix that cultural.
I know, right? I mean, I think that's an excellent question. And these are things that I've been thinking about for a while. Some of my guests, we have very in-depth conversations on the podcast because our average conversation is an hour or an hour, 30 minutes, you know, so we can delve into these issues I think really the African identity is misplaced. It's very difficult to place the African identity and even the more Ghanaian identity. Like if you ask really what is the mark of a Ghanaian, right? It's difficult for an individual to know intrinsically that this is what makes me uniquely Ghanaian. Yeah, we're going to talk about food and other things. Right? Yeah, because those are the things that we easily come to us. But we should have, like you're saying, like an identity of ourselves that really permeates through the whole Ghanaian
with key traits.
A key trait that we ascribe to, values that we really like imping on. And I think that's something that we should talk about. I don't think it's something I can solve on this show. However, we really need to go back into those foundations and knowing that. And I think, again, education is part of that. Because the way, for example, we even teach colonialism in school, I think is problematic. Because
it's celebrated.
It's kind of celebrated, right? But we should come from a place of knowing those history and what that did to us, but also trying to pave the new way forward, knowing our place in the world as Ghanaians, as Africans, and what that means for us, what that means for us as a minority group, as a marginalized group. And it should even empower us to want to break boundaries, right? And to set the tune. And I think that some countries, like for example, you guys are a music show, Nigerians are doing that in the Afro beats and, with more intentionality. And I think that we should put that. I mean, yesterday we heard that 3 of our major Afro beat stars are going to perform in the NBA finals. These are things that
they are
really...
not ours, they are Nigerian.
The continent.
Ours
The continent.
The continent has won, my brother. The continent has won.
I know, right? The continent has won. And the Ghana has won. And we should do that with more intentionality. And it should start from our schools. It should start from our children learning to speak our local languages, learning to take pride in our culture, right? And I think that's really where it begins.
Okay, so can I get a reaction from you with regards to the creative space, and how even we perceive, because you sit heavily in there, how consumers us perceive and consume our own crafts and art as well.
Okay, I mean, we went from a situation where when you say made in Ghana, you're like finishing this, that, I don't know, I'm not so sure, it's not good, it's that.
Which was true, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was true. it's not a lie.
It was true as in the finish wasn't great? Or it was true
No,
that
because we have this attitude of, let's just get it done.
Yes.
It's fine,
And
it doesn't matter, And that extra detail is what makes you different. That 2 minutes extra you put on something, or 5 minutes more you were thinking about it being different from everybody else's. That sets you apart. And we all grew up going to like trade fair and art center, and that was like where you would find our creativity in theory. And then there were one or two galleries, but it was like very typical. I don't want to say African-looking art, but that's
that was it actually.
We can all imagine what that would look like.
There were masks.
Wooden face masks, scary ones.
Those kind of things. So, which were not art in our traditional culture. I mean, these are spiritual effigies. They are like totems. They are items that are used and have a functionality. They are not just pretty to put on a wall.
They're not passive.
And they're not passive.
Thank you for saying this. I just to catch you because I've been wanting to say this, and I've always been afraid.
We get stuck in the word art, and so now we want to take something that someone else says looks like art to them, and try and make that now what our language is.
Yes. I went to this, it's a hotel, and they had these all across the walls in the rooms, and I woke up one midnight and I saw one on the wall. And I was scared.
Well,
The more they have, the more they say they are
for real, I was
eco-friendly.
scared. I was like, this isn't hospitable. This isn't comforting at all, because the hotel rooms, you can just turn on the yellow lights and it's dim, dark, and then there's this thing right in, and I'm like, no, whoever designed this didn't try.
Make your wish.
Because of the understanding of how that's how come I connect with what you're saying, that the use of these things, have been a bit misguided.
It's been altered, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, once it got taken from here and put in a museum elsewhere, it then now became an art object. Because it's out of its context. It's not being utilized for what it was created to be used for. And so it's now in like some foreign country, alien space, and it's just on a wall, Yes, you can read into the history and how it was used, but in that context, it has no reason for being. So I think initially, I'm speaking from like my lifestyle, I guess, growing up, we had a very heavy influenced culture from the US and from the UK. And so you find a lot of the youth aspiring to go to university there or to leave Ghana and go abroad, whatever the situation is. I need to leave Ghana. So already that tells you we're not very proud of being Ghanaian.
Of being Ghanaian, yeah.
Why does everyone want to leave somewhere to go somewhere better? Which that better is a big, in quotes better, because yes, you can have a certain standard of life if you're abroad. You can make a certain amount of income, but you are chained to a system that works a certain way, and that's not how we live here. So it's like you're now going to adapt your whole existence and how you know life to be in a space, that you have perceived to be better than where you come from. And so all these influences kind of like dictated to us what was cool and what wasn't. And if you wanted to be cool, anything that was Ghanaian was not cool at the time. And I'm talking about the 90s, let's say 80s, 90s. Like 80s, we had this whole influx of Chinese, cheap products that came through. I like that we are in this continent because everything comes through here.
The gateway.
It's like literally everything comes through. So we see everything, and we're not like picky about what we like. We like everything. Once it's foreign, we like you.
Facts.
So like we're curious about everything. We speak languages like nobody's business. I mean, I've met people here who speak all kinds of languages. Like from Eastern European because they ended up there with some random way. All kinds of languages. And we don't hold back when it comes to culture. So what is it about ours that we are so ashamed of and trying to hide and develop even? So there's been a period where this has started to change, and we've seen the youth now being like, yo, let's have our own conversation and speak of ourselves the way we want. And that's kind of like what even got me started in what I was doing, which was t-shirt design in the beginning, because I'm a graphic designer. And I was like upset. This is 2008 when we had the Cannes football.
2008, yeah.
And so everyone wanted some Ghana, outfit to wear. And like, it's the usual. It's either a jersey or some tie and dye Rasta looking, thing, which nothing again, I'm a Rasta myself. And, your village scene with a painted hut by the beach. That was like what we had as our expression in clothing. If not, you're going to wear a full-on, Ankara outfit and things, but that's not something you want to wear to the stadium. So I was like, well, we're highly lacking in design elements in Ghana. Let's say modern design elements, because we still have design, but and so t-shirts was the fastest way to even start that conversation. And so you see like a Charlie White t-shirt and it's looking foreign, but it's saying something Ghanaian, and so that was like kind of confusing people. And then because our Ghanaians abroad were now like, they're already in that environment, so they want to take something from here that they can wear there and still not stand out too much. I'm wearing a t-shirt from Ghana, but it's a t-shirt and it can blend, but people still ask you, what does that mean, or where's that from? And so they were the ones who were starting to be very much interested in what I was doing and, championing the cause, and then so those here now said, okay, if they think it's cool, then we can also think it's cool. And there's this thing we keep playing with, we're waiting for someone to give us approval from outside before we are like, okay, let's champion this person now here. So that's still going on today.
Yeah, really.
Because if your music was to blow if it blows outside, it's blown more than it has blown in Ghana. I'm like, why? The continent is huge. We are literally going to be the last frontier of the youth, because we have like the highest growing youth population in the world. I mean, this is a gold mine. And huge creativity is at the center of all that, because literally the youth are restless and, they want to get things done. They want new ways of doing things. And that's all creativity, So yeah, there's been a huge evolution, I think, at least in my lifetime, that I've seen, which was going from analog, no computers, no internet, all the way till now. It has really changed a lot of things in this society. Just the fact that we're exposed and have access to information the way we do today. And even that on educational fronts also, I mean, it's also a conversation that has opened doors to many who can, if you really want to learn, you can learn. Nothing's stopping you right now. You literally don't have to go to university. And even with like ChatGPT and all these new, AI systems coming up, what's the point of studying? We have to rethink, what are we studying and why? Because, this is all a new frontier, and you can literally tell ChatGPT, write me an essay for this, that, and it's done it. Like, I started using it. It makes my life easier. I have to write a letter to somebody. I just throw in the intent of the letter, and it gives it to me. And so it's like, even my admin, who maybe now have to say the English writing correct, is the spelling mistakes, the grammar, I don't have that issue.
It's sorted.
Because it's like, it's done, and it's done properly.
I want to ask, Stephanie, so...
is it off?
No, it's
changing. Okay, all right, sure.
So I'm just wondering, why does it look like we are always late to the party?
Late to the party?
Yes, in terms of these
I like
innovations, evolutions, and what. It's like everybody elsewhere takes the lead, and we have to now catch up.
Well, it depends what you want to achieve. Again, like what you were saying. Some people are focused on tech, and so they are pushing that agenda.
Yeah, but
collectively,
as
it's like we are so late to the party. And I have personal experiences as well, which for example, I started podcasting in 2006. I was creating a show called the Banging Hip Hop Show. It was a podcast recorded. It didn't survive the test of time because the people were not ready for it.
I mean, I went online.
I can tell you why we're always late to the party.
Why are we late to the party?
We're late to the party because the validation comes from outside.
But the validation, the guys who give the validation are already ahead. So why?
Yeah, so we are looking for an endorsement. So when you do something, why do you think Afrobeats is big? Afrobeats is not big because Ghanaians love Afrobeat. Ghanaians love Afrobeats because the rest of the world love Afrobeats. We are in love with the validation and the success we are getting from the rest of the world. If America and your Chris Browns and your UK scene stop messing with Afrobeats, and we have to own it ourselves and love ourselves for it, they'll start telling you that it passed. You are still doing this old thing. This new thing is what everybody's on. Go do it.
Because
that's why we always jump from one thing.
PJ Brother at that time, we were also putting out a podcast, and I was asking myself, like, can't you just see that we are doing this now? And it never saw the daylight.
One of the hardest things to be in Africa is a pacesetter.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was about to say. You can't be too early, You can literally be too early. And I had that experience. We went online. I couldn't have a local platform. I couldn't get my payments here, but I was like, no, let's do it anyway. So there was this platform that you could literally just create a shop and sell online. And this was in 2009.
Shopify then? Was it Shopify?
No, Big Cartel.
Oh, Big Cartel. Okay, right.
And people here were not ready. Like, where are the payment systems? You know, the whole system wasn't ready. You know, so I had to now have a bank somewhere in a different country. I don't get my money. I have to go there and get my, like, it was just a mess. So I think being late to the party, like he was asking, it has a lot to do with people's income levels, actually, because you cannot access certain things if you don't have a certain level of income or a certain lifestyle or a certain, you know, you can't afford certain things. Your mind is not even going to be on them. You get me? And if we're looking at sophisticated things, outside of Accra, Ghana is not very sophisticated. I'm sorry. You know, we have a few major cities here and there, but even there, you say go to Kumasi. Kumasi is like a village. They'll tell you that. It's quiet, it's peaceful, it's green, it's lovely, but there's nothing to do. They have their way of living, and either you join it or you're going to be you know, a bit frustrated if you're there. And, like, I can't be suffering about where I'm going to sleep and eat and be worrying about innovating.
Okay,
you get me?
I see what you mean.
Yeah, because you have to, you know,
I'm
fulfill those
battling
basic
daily
needs.
to figure out my today. You know, grind, hustle. And it's like, I don't have time to start. Our innovation, I've seen, unfortunately, has been very, very astute in when it comes to conning people. you know,
because it
doing
depends on survival.
scams. Yeah, it's survival.
Yeah.
It's like doing scams and like we are very, like, we can come up with some very sophisticated stuff.
Sophisticated ways to just outwit
know?
the next person.
Because survival is involved.
Like, but like when it comes, okay, let's do something for the greater good, and it's like, nah, I mean, I'm getting my own. You know, we also have that kind
Survival
of
of the
attitude here.
fittest.
Isaac, do you find enough cultural studies in our current education system to be able to groom us to identify who we really are? And when I say cultural studies, I'm talking about literally like cultural studies, like subjects that teach us who we are.
I think that we do it too late. There is, but we do it too late. But before even I go on that, I think the issue that we're just talking about has to recently about like ambition. We need people that reset and also challenge the status quo of what ambition really means for us. I think that one person that has done that in this world that we are right now globally is Elon Musk. For example, he has redefined what the possibilities of ambition could be, like going to space that really lacked for 50 years. He reignited that spirit for the Americans, right? I think one person that we can look up to and say the person did that for us, right, is Kwame Nkrumah. Really, like, he really pushed the African consciousness to a new level. We've not really had that for a very long time. So it makes it difficult for people also to be ambitious. Because yes, people have to talk about basic needs, etc. But there are people who are really good enough. They're not aspiring because really, our ambition level is very low.
Very low.
Very low.
So we identify ambition, but if you compare our ambition to what ambition should really be, our ambition is like, there.
And then so back to, we start very low, this cultural education. Like, I went to University of Ghana, and there is the African Studies Department. There is a required course. They call it University of Ghana General Required Courses, I think, UGRC. And one of those courses is an African study course. But most students don't take it serious. Because if the person has to wait till they are 22, they are 18, before you are telling them that they should take their culture serious,
Don't value it.
It's not really valued. That's what I'm saying. That we should start it early enough, right? By really, our environment should inspire the conversation. Like, one of the key things on today's podcast, you should listen to it, Change Africa podcast with Pressure Bones. It's something called transversal skills, right? And really making the environment a place of learning. How do we make sure that every environment is incentivized for learning? So, for example, a kid is walking around and then is passing through the Accra cultural market, and then he sees something, and the parent should be curious to know what that thing is and tell us, oh, wow, this is Africa's, this is Ghana's, this is Kwame Nkrumah's statue. Oh, this is Kwame Nkrumah did this. Starts inspiring a level of curiosity in our culture. And that's where it starts from. So let's do that early, and let's do that. Let's push it people when they are older. At that point, really,
you are yourself.
Yeah, you are yourself. You already built an identity. It's difficult to change. Let's try and infuse that into our growing, and I think that's what is going to change it. It's not like we don't have enough courses. There could be more intentionality in those things too, but it should start earlier, I think.
So if I understand what you're saying, so that means even with how media programming in our media space have happened over the years. We grew up watching a lot of cartoons, and I think we did well with watching things like By the Fireside, which inspired us to know about Anan's story. But over the years, we've realized that those things have been reduced, and we are watching a lot of foreign content, which in turn affects the way we even
Especially
think.
children.
Especially children, yes.
Like YouTube for kids is only like the only thing that kids now watch. I don't know if you have friends that are very early children. They are all watching YouTube for kids, but they are all white stuff. Right? There's no animation of a kid.
An African or Ghanaian content in there. Wow.
And we should do that. I mean, we are all now in the media space, right? And we should be more intentional about that. Because if not, we are going to wake up and have this conversation again sometime that, we are more globalized, and we are thinking about, because the kids started watching a story about someone in Belgium when they were 6 months, and they were not watching Anan's stories, right? And the stories that we're having, the accents of the kids that were speaking was a foreign accent. And so they learned that accent. It's not their fault that they did.
I think we can't teach solutions to our problems. A lot of things that we need to be as Ghanaians are cultural. It's the way you behave at home. It's the way you behave in your neighborhood. It's the way you behave when adults are around, when peers are around. These are subconscious things that you learn, which then become principles in your mind and your psyche and help you execute as you grow along. So what you said about being 25 and now learning about what happened between this person and that person is totally useless. Because the subconscious part of me that should know who I am and care about these things was not nurtured. So it's just information. I might as well be reading about what happened in Japan, because it's a history class. It's mundane. It's totally useless. But what I want to ask again is, how do we need to go back? The only way forward is to go back. We need to go back and consciously spotlight our history, who we were before the colonizers. Because Black history has been done a disservice globally, where Black history starts from the colonizers' perspective. Everything that Blacks were in every part of Africa and beyond, before the colonizer came, is not regarded as Black history. You get what I'm saying? But it's in that era that we need the foundations to help what we are doing now. Because we had trade, we had agriculture, we had mechanics, we had physics, we had biology, we had chemistry. They were not called these things. You might not go in the Ewe language and see a word for chemistry. But that doesn't mean that they didn't know how to mix herbs and get things done. You might not get a word in Akan language for biology. But that doesn't mean that Ayarsabia was not there. You get what I'm saying? So until I feel like even this formal education and kids going to school and learning all these fancy things and learning about AI and all that is great. It's still us trying to be a part of the progressive conversation. But we need to know that we are going in that progressive direction empty-headed.
Without a soul.
A Japanese kid in an AI class is learning that AI robotics on the foundation of knowing who she is. The Nigerian and the Ghanaian kid is just learning AI because there's no school in Ghana and this is the school I have to go. So automatically you coming out, graduate whatever, in the real world, applicable knowledge, zero. We've lost already. You might have the certification, blah, blah. And that is why all the CEOs are Indian. Because that cultural compass is there to take the knowledge. They went to the same Harvard with everybody else, blah, blah, blah. But
So then, what are the risks involved in us resetting ourselves to, one, identify who we really are, appreciate who we really are, and start building a foundation that we can use to set a vision and a direction for ourselves? What are the risks? Because now where the world is at now, I don't know if we if we can do this.
The risk is losing everything.
You can be global, and have a global mindset and still know your culture. You can participate in the global conversation, So be aware of it, obviously, and be informed on it. But still know yourself, because you cannot add anything to a conversation if you don't have anything of your own.
Yeah.
And if we don't have a history, or we've not learned even the effects of what colonization did to us, for example, I think that should be a class that should be had. Every class should understand that, your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents, they went through this, and this is how they were treated, and this is how it affected them. And there's been studies. I mean, we've done studies. Like, there's 1,000,001 studies on what the effects have been. But we don't want to heal as a nation. Don't we want to move past these things? So if we don't have, like you were saying, we have to have an idea of where you want to go, what you want to achieve. What should Ghana look like in 10 years? Has anyone sat down to think about that? Or in 50? How like Nkrumah did these things. He's like, okay, we are planning a 50-year or 100-year program, whatever it is, and these are the steps to follow. We keep having government changing, and everyone comes and has a new agenda. So it's like 4 year, 8 years, 4 years, 8 years, depending. You can't really build on it, that consistent change all the time. We don't have things that are set in stone, that no matter who comes and goes, we're carrying forward that
having
agenda.
like a national agenda, regardless of whatever tribe you belong to. You just have to.
So like if Ghana wants to see itself looking a certain way within, the next 10 or 20 years, what are we doing the year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and have like checks and balances to see if
is there an issue of classism, playing a role where the upper echelons want to enjoy,
that classism again came from colonialism, because it's a system that was put up because of that system.
Right.
So once you start to get into the mechanisms of these things, you're not scared of them anymore. You understand them. You can see them from the inside. But we don't even think of that even being a conversation. You get me?
You know what I struggle with? I don't know if you've seen this on the internet or on social media, that the youth should take over, but there are fears that the youth may be worse.
I mean, take over what?
Take over like some of these conversations or political government, stuff like that.
No, I mean, we should all be involved.
Right.
We should all have a voice.
Right.
But the youth should take over. Come on, they don't have the experience to take over.
Yeah, so but the fear is we are crying for the youth to enter these offices,
it's
enter
too much
these
of a
places.
Responsibility.
So how do we prepare the youth to get into these places and do the right things? Because we've seen how even from the SRC,
you know what children do? They learn from what they see, right?
Right.
So if you don't change, how are your children going to change?
So the change should come from the top.
The corruption that is already existing.
It's going to be recycling.
It's not the top. Every parent, every older person is responsible. If you go somewhere and you want a service in any government office, you are more inclined to expect that you have to pay a bribe than not.
That is the norm.
And that's the norm. And we are continuing to push this norm, even when some government agencies are trying to change that. Because I've been to some places where they've like, no more bribes, like, we're changing policy, we should do things properly. I went for a document, they told me come this day, I went and I got it. And my mom was with me and she's like, oh, haven't you given the girl something? I'm like, for what? I'm like, you are the kind of people that are continuing this system running because you feel it's not possible that you got something you didn't have to give something.
Right.
I said to you that at DVLA, at passport office now, things are so well done.
Yeah, really well.
But when your license expires, the first thing is, I bet somebody will.
Run out for me. I want to buy after.
Yeah, I need them quick. It's let me switch this up a little bit to talk about another very interesting thing an agenda that I've been fighting very hard, and I know some people will not like me for this, but I don't care because of my experience with visual arts against the sciences. Now, I keep saying that I'm so proud to see that a lot of my very good friends who were top, science students have now opened Jollof Instagram accounts. I'm very proud of you. That's what I say. I'm proud of all of you. Thank you very much.
Win for visual arts students.
Yes, visual arts students. For many years, home economics and co have been looked down upon as you didn't do well, so go and do that. Yeah. But now it's become major breadwinners for a lot of people, who are now selling shoes, bags, and cooking jollof. To be precise, fighting jollof wars, which is the biggest food conversation in Africa, if you ask me, thanks to home economics. So we have identified something that seems to be employing a lot of young people, and it brings us to the conversation on entrepreneurship. How should we accept that, look, the visual art space has become a very strong, vibrant, employing space for young people. So we should look at this and how do we grow it? First off, it's even about you accepting that what I'm saying is true. If it's false, then let's debate it. But if it has an element of truth in there, then what can we do, to be able to rally up a lot of people to now take on this? Because we mentioned China in industrialization. You mentioned India, IT.
yeah.
If Ghana, if ours is agriculture, is food, it's the creative arts. How do we build this space so that, look, 10 years from today, it's when you speak when you speak Ghana, you mention creativity. Nigeria has taken music from 419 to music. What is
That was a serious glow up,
Yes,
serious glow up, bro.
yes, serious. You mentioned Nigeria, you're talking creative arts standards, film and
We have it,
music
like,
is now,
and music, and film,
at the top. And it drills down to family. So everybody's trying to make sure that anything they put out there is good. How do we make ours? Should we take creative arts as ours? Is that what is budding?
Depends.
I don't know. Now let's Stefania talk about the creative art part. But I do feel like, the nation should stand for something, that we are trying to get to. Obviously, there's going to be diversity in it, and that's also beautiful. Like you're saying, technical and vocational education is just a core part of every country that really is building, right? Countries that are building, they need people with skill sets, right? And most of our education, unfortunately, have not been skill-driven, and so we need to focus on people that have skills. And that technical and vocational education, that's the people who are doing the home economics and all of that. They provide food that we are going to eat. Like the chairs that we are
problem. People. Look, I know the TVET is ongoing, but the issue is that the way we've couched it makes it look like it's a job opportunity for people who don't have anything to do. So go and cook. Go and learn how to do sandals.
Again,
that's my problem.
Again, that was
don't use the right
that was not by accident. It was engineered by our colonizers to kill those aspects of us because every culture learns differently. African culture across
Sorry to catch you, but I mean
African culture across the continent learns visually, orally, and through kinesthetics, doing. We are not a literary learning society. We are not, this is my postulated thought, and then she takes it.
We used to be, though.
We used to be, but mostly for documenting. When we do, or you tell me, and I need to secure it, then we transcribe to text. You understand? But we do more. That is why we are able to, half of the music genres, more than half of the music genres on the planet stemmed from Africa.
Beats.
Medicine started in Egypt. You understand? Agriculture started in Africa. We are doers. Even our oral storytelling by the fireside, Anansi Semo, all those, that's how we communicate. We learn differently. So in that time past, things like what you're saying, being able to go into a kitchen or a garden, get the right ingredients, intuitively know what to do and cook was a point of pride. It was a point of empowerment. But your colonizer cannot have you harnessing that self-knowledge, that self-worth. So it is shamed. And then our whole education system is now shoved into a literary styled education system where you have to read, memorize, regurgitate, and understand to function as an employee. Our colonizers did not need creators. They had the plan and what they needed. You were part of executing it. So we've had generations where we've been disconnected from who we are, how we learn, and why how we learn matters. Do you get it? So that's why when you get vocational studies in school, you are shamed for it. Because guess what? Your parents were shamed. Their parents were shamed. The grandparents before them were shamed. So now vocational skills is crown. Oh, that's the question. Yeah, if you call anybody and say, Olele got into the school, or they gave him vocational studies, there'll be no joy. There'll be instant concern. Oh, he didn't learn. Because the colonizer told you that the only way to get a job in my colony is English, maths, and if you are good at science. So, again, decolonizing the African mind, the Ghanaian mind, is where all our solutions start. If today we are being able to celebrate people selling jollof on Instagram, It's not because of the cultural whatever. It's because of the validation that comes with it. Because it is perceived to be entrepreneurial. But it's not. Selling jollof on Instagram is not entrepreneurial. You haven't solved any problem. People have been wanting jollof before Instagram came. You have just provided another outlet for a product that people already had a demand for. Do you get what I mean? But because people perceive it as it's entrepreneurial and there's some validation that comes with it, we are confusing it to make it look as if vocational and whatever is on the rise. It's not. Until people are queuing, more people are queued outside of your vocational institute than at your places where they want to go and read philo. Then you have a solution.
I think there's still some entrepreneurism in that, but I would agree with you. Like, we need to embrace that level of education, and it starts from telling stories or redefining our consciousness to really accept that there is utility in vocational education, and it's not meant for a certain group of people only, right? Because a lot of these people, like engineers, all of that, like the way we even think about those things are different. Like, people who have technical vocational backgrounds could merge into engineers. Like, there are mechanics who need technical education training, and that could be a huge part of the engineering industry, right? It's not, because truly, even our engineering schools themselves, right, in the universities, have not shown to be very practical based.
Yeah.
And
like
and we have mechanical engineers who are as not good as your regular fitter. Right?
Fitter.
And
I mean,
that's the way
there was
they
a joke that
It's
they said
fitter.
some.
It's
They said some. Somebody who teaches electrical engineering has electrical problem. Called the guy down the street. In the kiosk. Right? Somebody who lectures electrical engineering has a wiring problem in their house. Cannot get their two sets because he passed in theory. You call the electrician. Yeah, who can't speak English, but you get it. So
but we disrespect Yao.
We disrespect Yao. Do you know why we disrespect Yao? Because Yao does not fit the brand approved by the colonizer. He can't speak good English. He might not present himself well. He does not come across as astute in any form whatsoever.
Right.
So because of these three elements that he doesn't present to us visually and whatever, we disregard his intellectual capability, which is nya.
But I have friends like that, and those guys are very smart.
Yeah.
They are very smart.
Yeah.
They do things you can't do. So on that basis, truly, they
Bro,
have
the people who build the pyramids, none of them has a bachelor's degree.
I've been to the pyramids, and it's amazing. Like, it's amazing. Like, there are these huge chunks of stone, like huge, right? And there's literally almost nothing in it. But they've been stuck together and stuck together and stuck together.
All the way to the top.
Yeah, all the way to the top. And unfortunately, the story is, I think, if I'm correct, that the king that enabled the pyramids to be built killed everybody because he wanted to keep the knowledge out.
Wow.
Unfortunately, yeah. And doesn't allow it to perpetuate.
Wow.
But yeah, we do need technical education because we are not going to build this country in the state that it is with all people studying philosophy and the sciences. Like, we do need the technology advancements in AI, etc. But those foundations that have enabled the Americas and the Chinas to be able to start forging new pathways in artificial intelligence was built by an industrial economy. We have not had success there yet, right? So we have to think about how do we juxtapose a need for industrialization and a need for rapid technology advancement. We need to probably be doing both at a time, and that is what we need to then strategize very well. We are doing things without a plan. I think that's
the biggest problem. I mean, we have one, case studies abroad of everything possible imaginable that's ever been done in the world, which we can learn from. We don't have to make the same mistakes. People have gone ahead in tech and in any kind of developments. It's there. You don't need to now go and try and fall and get up before you figure it out. So we can literally import the best from the world and make it adapt to our situation.
I think case studies are it's a good thing.
I mean, it's all there for you to pick from. Don't try this solar because it doesn't work well. But try this. It's there. They've done it. They've made the mistakes already and they've solved the problems. So I think we're even in that advantageous position to revamp a nation. I would start with a feel-good campaign, to be honest. I think the media has to come in first because propaganda is where everything begins. With moving a nation, the government has to do some form of propaganda. So if they really are intentioned on, changing the mindset and letting people start to think in a different way, because we're not made to be thinkers. We're made to be, like you're saying, executioners. Let's execute. Just execute. Don't ask questions. Don't wonder. Just do as you are told. And that's how our school systems work. That's how our culture is. Like, children are not allowed to ask questions. It's considered rude. You can't talk back. You can't doubt and add. You can't do anything. And so you just stay in your corner and kind of like not want to do much more, because your whole life you've been told, keep it under locks, like keep it quiet.
Keep it quiet.
Don't bring your head up. And it does not just Ghana. This is global. I mean, all educational systems are made to have those calm, obedient slaves for the system. And we are no exception to that. But if we want to start seeing, because we have so much potential, literally, we don't need anything. Our land is rich. We have energy free flowing. How is it that we don't have
We need something.
You know, like,
We need the mindset.
what is wrong with us that we have everything and yet we are lacking everything?
I think I agree.
Because you don't know what to do with it.
Talk about
The knowledge.
We have 2 minutes to go.
So-called propaganda campaign. I mean, just a few years back, we've been talking about where Ghana, etc., etc. It's taken a long time. But you go on the streets right now, you see a lot of people wearing African prints or something. It's worked to a certain extent. Maybe we should really, I don't know.
Media and propaganda,
we do need some level of propaganda campaign. Like, in the Russia, I was following the Russia-Ukraine war, right? The people in Russia, they were still backing their governments, right? Because there's a huge, massive propaganda campaign around how that is really nationalistic, blah, 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 no matter how crazy it was. People still back them. How do we, I guess, as a media front, really have a resurgence of a national consciousness that is back on a new Ghana? Somehow, I don't know, we have to have a team, right? The team that has worked, that all the Americans are coming to Ghana and coming to buy properties for thousands of Ghana. We need to make sure that we are doing that, right? Maybe starting from education and saying that, okay, this is what the national identity of Ghana is, and we are pushing that to every small 5-year-old kid, whatever. And it's going to take 10 years maybe, but at that time, our mindset might have changed.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, our time is up though, but I have said to my team already. They said, do not urinate here or be fined 500 cedis. Don't urinate there. Do not urinate here. Your urine will be used for rituals.
Are you serious? Have you seen that one?
Let us customize the policies to fit us, the people, and they'll react to it better. But thank you so very much, Stephania and Isaac, for being guests with us this morning. Unfortunately, our time is up. We have to go. But this is a conversation worth having.
Quickly, I mean,
just
the
Change Africa podcast.
We
exhausted the time.
We launched a special series with TEDx Accra. And that is where Stephania was my guest. We spoke for an hour talking about creativity in Ghana and all the amazing work he's done for the creative space, our local house, etc. So do listen to us everywhere you get your podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all of that. We are having an upcoming partnership with Apple Podcasts. They're going to be supporting us. We're sponsored by ACAST, the platform that hosts us. We are thankful for them. So please listen to the Change Africa podcast. We just have exciting conversations like we've had today, and we go in depth trying to explore some of the biggest questions with people like
many,
who have done a lot of things for the African continent and for their individual spaces that they are in.
Local house. I don't know how it's just been. It's like it's been
a
there
quiet
for
little thing.
quiet little thing.
Yeah,
but
it's been 10 years now.
You're not going.
15 this
15.
year.
15. Yeah. Local house. Like iconic. I'm telling you. I never entered, but you know the building.
Like, I don't get people, man. Oh, I saw it. I've seen it, but I've never been inside. I've seen it, but I've never been inside.
Yeah. But anyway, I think I'll make a conscious...
invited, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so very much. And we are back at the same time tomorrow for the weekend edition of Culture Daily. And have an amazing day, and we're out.